If you went to your polling station today and realized that the only presidential candidates we have are Kalonzo Musyoka and President Ruto, where will you place your vote? That's a question that I would like you to answer in this video. Go to the comment section and tell us where will you place your vote. Because when you look at how things are panning out, the race is likely to be a two-horse race where we have Kalonzo Musyoka for the United Opposition and President Ruto for this other side. So if the race will be that way, how will Kenyans vote? That's why I said go to the comment section, because we can start voting right away.
We do not intend to disappoint Kenyans. Therefore, we want to assure our supporters we believe William Ruto and his failed regime with their failed policies should be a one-term president.
Si mimi nitashindana na Kalonzo. Huyu Kalonzo kweli mkiona na.
Now, which regions does President Ruto heavily rely on? Rift Valley, Luo Nyanza, Northeastern, and the coastal region. So he relies on 4 regions that I've just listed. How about Kalonzo? Kalonzo relies so heavily on 2 regions. That's the point. Kalonzo relies so heavily on Eastern and Mount Kenya region. And for Mount Kenya, it is definitely Central Kenya. So that means we've removed Mount Kenya East from the equation. So if President Ruto relies on 4 regions, in totality, how many votes are those? Rift Valley has about 5 million registered voters. That is according to IBC 2022 register. Luo Nyanza, 2.1. So in total, we have 7 million registered voters. The other region is Northeastern. Northeastern, less than 1 million. So let's say it's 1 million. We have 8 million. Go to the coastal region, about 2 million. Let's say 2 million. Now 8 million plus 2 million, we get 10 million votes. So meaning President Ruto will start with 10 million votes. How about Kalonzo? Kalonzo Musyoka will start with 3 million from Central Kenya. And 2 million, not the actual 2 million, about 2 million from Eastern. If you total, you get about 5 million. Let's now say 5 million. So what do you see? You see President Ruto winning. President Ruto is far much ahead. President Ruto is ahead by 5 million. But again now, when you narrow down, because I said regions that these people are sure will vote for them, like almost 100%. Now, after that, I want you now to start now breaking down how all this will play out. If you break it down slowly by slowly, then you start seeing that despite Kalonzo starting with 5 million, Kalonzo Musyoka has a competitive advantage that is likely to push him to victory. Kalonzo Musyoka starts with 5 million, that is from Central Kenya and Lower Eastern. 5 million, while President Ruto begins with 10 million. So, how again does Kalonzo have a competitive advantage? One, it's because of Western Kenya. So, if the opposition makes the right choice and picks Natembeya as the running mate, then Kalonzo quickly gets that advantage, where Kalonzo will take almost 70% of Western Kenya votes because of Natembeya being on their ticket. That quickly pushes Kalonzo to 7.5 million because Western Kenya will bring in 2.5 million, right? So President Ruto will take something that will move him so quickly. But here we are seeing Kalonzo making big moves, right? Now, from there, you go to Gusiland. So when you go to Gusiland, with Matiang'i supporting Kalonzo, then almost 1 million votes will go to Kalonzo. That quickly pushes Kalonzo to 8.5 million votes. Then you move to Nyanza. Nyanza will get Kalonzo 500,000. That pushes Kalonzo to 9 million, right? Because it is Kalonzo who is fighting to catch up with President Ruto and go ahead of him, right? Now here we have Kalonzo with 9 million after getting 5,000 from Luo Nyanza. So President Ruto is also moving forward a little bit, right? You get what I mean? A little bit. So let's say President Ruto is at 10.5 million, right? Kalonzo is catching up. Now, when you come to Nairobi, Kalonzo wins, where President Ruto goes home with 30%, while Kalonzo gets 70%. And that gives Kalonzo almost 2 million votes. And let's say it is 2 million. Where do you get Kalonzo? You get Kalonzo at now 11 million, because 9 plus 2 will definitely get you 11 million. Okay, so as you move to Mount Kenya East, again Kalonzo gains, Ruto moves forward. So at the end of it, when you do your math, slowly by slowly, Kalonzo is ahead of President Ruto. Yes, so understand this. I began with Ruto having 10 million, Kalonzo having 5 million. But now when you start going region by region, Kalonzo catches up with President Ruto and goes ahead of him to win the general election. But the big question is, does Kalonzo have the rigor, the energy to make it a reality? Because this is an analysis. This is what is likely to play out. But now what matters is the energy Kalonzo will put forward or invest to make this a reality. Also, this matters when Kalonzo chooses a running mate from Western Kenya. And I've been mentioning it many times that Kalonzo has a chance of winning if he takes a running mate from Western Kenya. So if Kalonzo makes the right choice, especially on the running mate issue, where he picks Natembeya, he has a chance. If Kalonzo makes sure that Matiang'i doesn't run, instead Matiang'i supports him, he has a chance. Now, another aspect is, does Kalonzo have money enough for his campaigns? This time around, it is a yes. That Kalonzo has Mount Kenya, and Mount Kenya billionaires will definitely support him. And if you go to the coastal region also, Kalonzo is likely to attract billionaires. So Kalonzo will have strong funding that will cancel out President Ruto's strong funding advantage. Because President Ruto, given that he has state machinery and all that, and he has access to resources, definitely he has a strong funding. And this time around, we have Kalonzo also having the same. So finally, will Kalonzo have that energy? Will Kalonzo push and not play this godly-like figure? Like play it soft and be a little bit attacking? Because he has to dig out all President Ruto's weaknesses and tell Kenyans that President Ruto is not someone they can give power again. Because if he fails to do that, then President Ruto's image will be viewed not that tainted. And people will be soft on him. And that makes it easier for President Ruto to be re-elected. So, what Kalonzo has to do after getting funding and all that, he has to make sure he talks so effectively about the failures of President Ruto. Talk effectively about the economy, how President Ruto has ruined the economy. talk about President Ruto's failures to protect human rights and freedoms. President Ruto's failures to protect democracy. Try to communicate to Kenyans in a persuasive way. If Kalonzo does that, he will have advantage. He should find a way to counter President Ruto in all ways possible. If he does so, then Kalonzo will be a strong candidate. But if he fails to do that, it will be difficult to defeat President Ruto. So folks, as we move into 2027, you must understand that Ruto and Kalonzo will definitely be on the ballot. And these are front runners. And each of them has a competitive advantage. But what will differentiate these two is how they play out their game well. So if Kalonzo plays his game well, he can outdo President Ruto and win. But if he doesn't play his game well, definitely President Ruto will be re-elected, because both have a high chance of getting power again in 2027. So, what do you think between Kalonzo and Ruto? Where will you place your vote? Keep it here on Owen Analysis.